More Americans than ever own stocks. This is according to a survey from the Federal Reserve on consumer finances. 58% of U.S. households owned stocks at some point in 2022. That's up from 53% in 2019 and marks the highest annual response that they have gotten in the once every 3-year survey of Americans. This does include both families that own individual shares directly, as well as those that own them through funds inside of a 401k or IRA or something like that. And I think when I look at this, I know a lot of people poo-poo it and be like, oh, like people are just investing in really dumb stuff. And it's true. Yes. But I think that many investors get their start investing in dumb stuff, or at least I know I certainly did. And so I think the fact that you are just getting started, and then even if not everyone who gets started continues on the path of learning and trying to invest, better and more efficiently and with, a better approach, a lot of those people will stick around. And I think that you start to, develop something that becomes a habit, not just a casino game that you're playing.
Yeah, I hope we talked about this in early 2020 when the world was blowing up and Dave Portnoy claimed himself to be a better investor than Warren Buffett.
For a brief period of time, he was. The problem is that brief period of time ended.
Yeah, he did not last terribly long as a
when you're pulling letters out of a Scrabble bag to pick stocks. I mean,
yeah. So there was that period of time, and we talked about it, right? Like, is this going to be a net positive for just like the general public? And we said at the time, what we're seeing right now is going to end dangerously for a whole bunch of people. People are probably wagering money that they think is investing and is more like gambling, and they don't really understand that right now. And for some portion of those people, they're going to get burnt pretty badly. The question is, I think the question to me, and we won't know for another 2 years, is but do this survey again in 2025, and have we maintained these higher levels of people who have stock exposure as a household? Like that is, to me, kind of the definition of did this work or not. I'll also point out that, we're mainly talking about that phase where people were getting stimulus checks and sports betting was non-existent, and so people were turning to the likes of Robinhood and Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports to find their, fix for gambling. On October 7th of 2019, I'll also point out that is when the big trading platforms went to zero commissions.
Was it only that long ago?
It's only that long ago that Schwab announced on October 7th, 2019, that they are doing away with trading fees for equities across the board. And then Fidelity, I believe, was the second to that party after Robinhood had done it years ago. So that is definitely playing a role, too. And we saw that play out in the 80s, right, when online brokerages started coming up and, making an easier process for you to place trades online. We were at, a stage where only 30-ish% of people were owning equities back in 1989. And by the time 98 rolled around, you were nearly up to 50%. So innovation and technology does play a role here, too.
And the Wall Street Journal, this is the story that I think really captures this. There was a guy by the name of Nick Luzak, who was a sophomore at University of Michigan back in early 2020. And he took the $57 in his checking account to open up a brokerage account. And, again, $57, like, you can't do a ton with it.
Right.
But, he said, yeah, let me try this. And he started going on Robinhood, and he was, buying whatever stocks he could and this and that. He started a group chat with his friends. He got involved in, all the GameStop and AMC stuff and this and that. Great line here. At one point, he considered becoming a day trader, which any day trader will tell you,
don't quit your day job.
You really, really shouldn't do that because it's just ridiculously hard to make money consistently doing that. It's like when I was 22 years old and went to Foxwoods for the first time, and then driving home, I was like, oh, gee, maybe I'll be a professional poker player, and that really just did not work out because it usually doesn't. Oh. But the next line I think is great here. Now Luzak, who's 24 years old, is focused on long-term investing. A salesman in Dallas, he's studying to become a certified financial planner. Like that's what I love to see is people who say, okay, I took my lumps, like I did some really stupid stuff, and I made some money sometimes, I lost money sometimes, but net it probably didn't get me anywhere.
Yeah.
And, hey, you know what? I need to spend more time studying this so I don't make the same dumb mistakes, but actually can grow my wealth for the future using the right tools. And that's what I really like to see, quite honestly.
I do too. I have to openly ponder if that's the exception or the. I mean, certainly his situation where he's studying to be a CFP is the exception, not the rule.
Of course.
However, I remain unconvinced that the majority of people who went through 2020 and did what he did, net are going to benefit from it long time. I'm concerned that they might have gotten burnt too hard, spent money they shouldn't have on it, and long-term might not be willing to turn back to that same methodology for building wealth over time.
There's people who fall into both those categories.
Certainly.
No doubt about it. And I just hope, because I've said this before, but anyone who says they've never lost money in the stock market either A, is lying to you or hasn't been doing it long enough. Because if you invest long enough, you always will have periods where you lose money in the stock market. I think that the question is, how do you approach that and how do you learn from it? And sometimes the learning from it is just, hey, I'm not very good at this, so I'm just going to invest in, things that work for me. And it doesn't even have to be investing in the stock market, but just, hey, now I know what, a CD is, or now I know like what a bond is, and you can find things that work for you. That's where I think I'm hopeful that we'll be going. Not everyone will, but look, that's always the case. There are always people who, unfortunately, aren't good at stuff, but aren't also self-aware enough to realize they're not good at it, and it hurts them, and it sucks, but that's just kind of the real world, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think what you can say is people, undoubtedly, they know more about this universe than they did 4 years ago. I think that's one thing I feel confident saying. They have learned how to open a brokerage account. They've learned some of the basics, probably learned that stocks don't always go up. And if nothing else, I think that knowledge is beneficial.